In the 13th century, one empire seemed unstoppable. The Mongols, led by the legendary Genghis Khan, forged a force that reached across continents, controlling more land than any empire before or after. But how did a group of nomadic warriors from the steppes of Central Asia come so close to conquering the world? With unparalleled military strategies, a brutal drive for conquest, and innovation that outpaced their time, the Mongols were a force to be reckoned with. This video will take you through the shocking story of how Mongolia almost conquered the world. Stay tuned, because the true secret behind their success is still one of history's greatest mysteries. Could their empire have gone even further? Let's find out. But what was it that allowed them to conquer so much so fast? Let's take a closer look at the Mongol army's unmatched strategies. At the heart of the Mongol Empire's success was its unparalleled military strategy. Genghis Khan's rise from a humble, exiled warrior to the ruler of the largest contiguous empire in history was nothing short of extraordinary. His leadership was rooted in a profound understanding of both the battlefield and human nature. The Mongols' ability to move swiftly across vast distances allowed them to strike where their enemies least expected it. Their cavalry, often mounted on superior horses, was fast and deadly. Unlike most armies of the time, the Mongols fought with incredible coordination, using a complex system of signals to communicate and strike with precision. But what made them even more deadly were their innovative tactics, such as feigned retreats that lured their enemies into traps. This allowed them to overcome even the most formidable foes. With such mastery of warfare, the Mongols seemed invincible, and their empire grew at an alarming rate. But what did the Mongols do with this military power? How did they expand so rapidly? With their unrivaled military prowess, the Mongols swiftly expanded, conquering vast territories across Asia and Europe. They began with the nearby Khwarezmian Empire, which underestimated the Mongol forces, paying a terrible price for it. Genghis Khan's relentless drive led them to invade Central Asia, the Middle East, and even Eastern Europe. However, the Mongols weren't just about brute force. Their well-planned sieges and ability to adapt to different terrains and climates were crucial. Cities that had been thought to be invulnerable fell under their relentless assault. As the empire expanded, so did its need for effective communication. The Mongols established an advanced postal system, ensuring fast and reliable communication across the vast expanse of their empire. But as the empire grew, so did the internal challenges they faced. Could the Mongols maintain their control over such a massive area, or would their empire eventually crumble under its own weight? But what happened when the Mongols faced an enemy they couldn't easily defeat? The Mongols seemed unstoppable, but even they faced moments of doubt. Their campaigns in Eastern Europe had been brutal, but they encountered unexpected resistance in places like Hungary and Poland. Despite overwhelming numbers, some fortified cities withstood Mongol attacks longer than expected. Why? Because the Europeans, unlike many of the Mongols' previous enemies, adapted quickly. They built stronger defenses, used scorched earth tactics, and refused open battle, denying the Mongols their favorite strategy. But just when it seemed that Europe might mount a significant defense, something happened that no army could control. In 1241, the Mongols were on the verge of conquering more European territories when they suddenly withdrew. It wasn't because of battle losses, it was because of something much bigger than war itself. What could have forced the Mongols to retreat at the height of their power? What could have been so important that it made the Mongols turn back? The answer will surprise you. Just when the Mongols were poised to conquer more of Europe, their campaign came to an abrupt halt. The reason? The sudden death of the great Khan Ögedei, son of Genghis Khan. According to Mongol law, all ruling members of the empire had to return to Mongolia to elect a new Khan. This moment changed history. If Ögedei had lived longer, would Europe have fallen under Mongol rule? Many historians believe so. The Mongols had no true rival in battle, and their empire-building machine was still running at full force. But the death of their ruler forced them to pause, and in that pause, Europe caught its breath. Fortifications were improved, new alliances were formed, and the Mongols never returned with the same force. What if history had taken a different turn? Could we be living in a world shaped by Mongol rule today? But this was only one of the twists in the Mongol story. The real shocker is still ahead. We often imagine the Mongols as fearsome warriors, galloping across the steppes with their bows and swords. But did you know that these ruthless conquerors also helped create something we all use today? Paper money? That's right. The Mongols not only spread destruction but also economic innovation. Under Kublai Khan, the Mongols expanded the use of paper money, making it the primary currency of their empire. Before that, most economies relied on gold, silver, or barter. But carrying heavy metal coins wasn't exactly convenient when traveling thousands of miles. So they printed banknotes. Yes, centuries before Europe even thought about it. However, there was one small problem. If you refused to accept Mongol-issued paper money, the punishment was, well, a bit severe. Let's just say it wasn't optional. Can you imagine if your bank charged overdraft fees with the Mongol approach, not paying a fine? Off with your head. Good thing our modern banks don't follow Mongol policies. Or do they? But while the Mongols were changing the economy, they were also preparing for their next major conquest. The Mongols weren't just financial innovators. They were still the most fearsome military force on the planet. After temporarily halting their expansion due to political struggles, they were back. Under Kublai Khan, the Mongols set their sights on new territories, the Song dynasty in China, Southeast Asia, and even Japan. But this time, they faced challenges they hadn't encountered before. The densely populated cities of China required prolonged sieges. The humid jungles of Vietnam and Burma drained their energy, and when they tried to invade Japan in 1274, nature itself turned against them. The famous Divine Wind, or kamikaze, destroyed much of the Mongol fleet, preventing a successful invasion. For the first time, the Mongols were being stopped, not by human hands, but by the forces of nature itself. But did that mean they were no longer unstoppable? But just as the Mongols faced these obstacles, a shocking event would soon shake their empire to its core. The Mongols had fought countless enemies and conquered nearly everything in their path, but they were about to encounter a force that even their legendary army couldn't defeat, an invisible killer. As the Mongols continued their conquests, a deadly plague began to spread among their ranks. At first, it was just a few sick soldiers, but soon, entire camps were infected. The Mongols, known for their discipline and resilience, had no defense against this new enemy. The disease spread so quickly that entire armies were weakened before they could even reach battle. But the real catastrophe wasn't just for the Mongols, it was for the entire world. Because the Mongols controlled vast trade routes, the plague traveled with them, spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. And soon, it would reach Europe. The question was, could it be stopped before it wiped out millions? And now, for the most shocking part, how the Mongols unknowingly set off one of the deadliest pandemics in history. It's one of history's most horrifying ironies. The Mongols, known for bringing empires to their knees with their military strength, also played a key role in spreading the deadliest pandemic in human history, the Black Death. As they expanded their empire, the Mongols controlled vast trade networks, including the legendary Silk Road. But along with silk, spices, and technology, something far deadlier traveled with them: plague-infested fleas. The Mongols unknowingly carried the disease from Central Asia to the Middle East and eventually Europe. In one of the most infamous events during the siege of Kaffa in 1346, Mongol forces, already weakened by disease, resorted to biological warfare. They catapulted infected corpses over the city walls, infecting the defenders. When merchants fled, they carried the plague to Italy and beyond, igniting an outbreak that killed up to 60% of Europe's population. So, in a way, the Mongols didn't just conquer lands, they unknowingly conquered the world with death itself. But let's take a step back. After all this devastation, could the Mongols have had a lighter side? We know the Mongols as ruthless warriors, but did you know they were also responsible for matchmaking? That's right. Genghis Khan didn't just conquer lands, he also played Cupid. The Mongols had a unique way of forming alliances, marriage. Instead of relying purely on treaties, Mongol leaders strategically married their sons and daughters to rulers of different regions. If you were a noble and received a wedding proposal from the Mongols, saying no wasn't really an option. Fun fact, Genghis Khan is estimated to have fathered so many children that today about 16 million men worldwide share his DNA. Talk about leaving a legacy. But imagine if the Mongols had taken this idea even further. Speed dating on horseback, wedding invitations delivered by arrows. Do you take this Khan to be your lawfully wedded ruler? A Mongol wedding wasn't just about love, it was about survival. But despite their creative strategies, not all Mongol conquests went as planned. In fact, some had consequences they never saw coming. The Mongols crushed armies, overran cities, and reshaped entire civilizations. But even they had moments when things didn't go their way. One of their biggest miscalculations was their invasion of Southeast Asia. Used to the open steppes, the Mongols struggled in the thick, humid jungles of Vietnam and Burma. Instead of open field battles, they faced guerrilla tactics, disease, and an enemy that refused to fight head-on. The Mongols were forced into exhausting jungle warfare, something they were completely unprepared for. In Vietnam, the local forces lured the Mongols into narrow river valleys, where they ambushed them with deadly precision. The Mongols, so used to swift victories, found themselves bogged down and unable to adapt. For the first time, they weren't the ones dictating the war. It was a bitter lesson. Not all terrain could be conquered with brute force alone. Could this be the first sign of their decline? Could the Mongols really be stopped? Or was this just a temporary setback? For over a century, the Mongols seemed invincible. Their empire stretched from China to Eastern Europe, ruling over millions of people. But cracks were beginning to show. As the empire expanded, it became harder to control. Local rulers, once loyal to the Great Khan, started rebelling. The Mongols relied on speed and mobility, but now, with vast cities to govern and supply routes stretched thin, they were slowing down. Internal conflicts among Genghis Khan's descendants weakened their unity. The once mighty Golden Horde faced resistance in Russia, while in Persia and China, Mongol rulers struggled to keep control. In the midst of all this, something was happening in Europe and the Middle East. A new force was rising, one that would challenge Mongol rule in ways they never expected. The empire that once seemed unstoppable was beginning to fracture. But who would be the one to strike the first major blow? And soon, that blow would come from an unexpected place. The Mongols had faced resistance before, but nothing like this. In 1260, at the Battle of Ain-Jalut, the unstoppable Mongol war machine finally met its match. The Mamluks, a warrior slave army from Egypt, used the Mongols' own tactics against them. Unlike previous enemies, the Mamluks didn't panic when the Mongols feigned retreat. They saw through the trick and counterattacked. The battle was brutal. For the first time, a Mongol army was decisively defeated. This wasn't just a battle, it was a turning point. The Mongols, who once seemed destined to rule the world, had proven they could be stopped. Word of the defeat spread, emboldening rebels and enemies across the empire. The Mongols would never recover their momentum. The illusion of invincibility was shattered. But could this truly be the beginning of the end for the world's greatest empire? The Mongols had been defeated, but they weren't gone yet. However, their greatest enemy might not have been an army at all. Yes, you read that right. The Mongols, known for conquering cities and crushing empires, might have played a role in bringing ice cream to the world. According to some historians, when the Mongols invaded China, they encountered an early form of frozen dairy treats. They took this knowledge westward as they expanded their empire. Marco Polo, the famous Venetian traveler, is believed to have brought the concept of ice cream back to Italy after encountering it in Mongol-controlled China. So, if you've ever enjoyed a scoop of vanilla on a hot day, you might have the Mongols to thank for it. Just imagine a Mongol warrior taking a break from battle, licking a cone of ice cream. Conquer first, dessert later. Maybe that was their real motto. Who knew that alongside their brutal warfare, the Mongols had a sweet side? But while they might have introduced some sweet treats, their empire was about to face its bitter end. The Mongols had built the largest land empire in history, but even the greatest empires fall. As internal conflicts weakened their unity, external enemies seized the opportunity. The once mighty Mongol Empire split into separate khanates, each ruled by different branches of Genghis Khan's descendants. The Yuan dynasty in China, established by Kublai Khan, faced rebellions that would eventually drive them out. The Golden Horde in Russia struggled against rising Slavic states. In Persia, the Mongol Ilkhanate collapsed due to economic troubles and internal strife. And in Central Asia, the Chagatai Khanate lost control over its territories. By the 15th century, what was once an empire that ruled over a quarter of the world had fractured into remnants. The Mongols were no longer an unstoppable force, but even though their empire faded, their influence on the world would never disappear. And one final fact about their legacy will shock you. But even though their empire disappeared, one incredible fact about their legacy remains. You might think the Mongol Empire is long gone, but its legacy is still alive, literally. Genetic studies have revealed that up to 16 million men today are direct descendants of Genghis Khan. That's roughly 0.5% of the world's male population. This is due to the Mongols' widespread conquests and strategic marriages. Genghis Khan and his descendants ensured their bloodlines spread across Asia, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe. His empire may have disappeared, but his DNA continues to shape the world in ways few conquerors ever have. Think about it. 1 in 200 men on the planet today carries the genetic mark of history's greatest conqueror. So, the next time you look in the mirror, ask yourself, could you be carrying the blood of the Mongols? The empire may have fallen, but in a way, the Mongols never truly left. The Mongols may have faded from history, but their bloodline still walks among us today.